Welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. The drift to the right all across Europe and the U.S., more and more people are giving the political right a new look. And more times than not, it is the issue of immigration that galvanizes voters. Is the politics of intolerance coming into vogue? To discuss the growing appeal of the right wing, I'm joined by Tommy Robinson in London. He is the leader of the English Defence League. And in Strasbourg, we cross to Edward Mortimer. He is a senior vice president and chief program officer at the Salzburg Global Seminar, and another member of our Crosstalk team, Yelena Hunger. All right, gentlemen, this is Crosstalk. You both have different points of view. I'd like to go to Edward first in Strasbourg. We had a poll that came out a few days ago that Madame Le Pen is ahead in the polls for the presidential poll in France next year. She's beating the president. Others will even say if the vote were held now, they would vote for her. Also, if I can go to Mail Online, a British publication here, the headline is, half of Britons would vote for far-right parties if they gave up violence. And if I can continue, a total of 48% said they would definitely support or consider supporting a party with such an agenda if it shunned violence and fascist imagery. What is going on all across Europe? Why such a great appeal to the right and so dramatic?
Well, I think that there's no doubt that Europe is feeling a lack of a sense of direction at the moment. We haven't got very strong national leaders, and we certainly haven't got very strong leaders at the European level. We are suffering, of course, the after effects of the major economic crisis. As you know, the euro has been under a lot of pressure, particularly some countries close to default and having to make very heavy cuts in government spending. So I think that people are fed up and they're looking around for other people to blame, and they're probably looking for something new and different and which sounds more decisive. But of course, one shouldn't prejudge too quickly what the results will be in real elections where governments are being chosen. I think from that point of view, the most significant so far is in the Netherlands last year, which has resulted in a government that is relying for support on one of these far-right parties, but has not yet brought it in. In most other countries, they are still more or less at the margins of politics.
Okay, Tommy, if I can go to you, is your organization, is it more of a, do you see the attraction to your group as more of a protest, or is it much more than that? Because even Edward said a lot of people are having have a lot of issues with the status quo, that the European leaderships have not performed in the way people would have liked.
Yeah, we're a street protest movement. I believe a lot of people would wish for us to be a political organisation, but we're not. We're a single-issue organisation who want to raise awareness and put pressure on the politicians that are already there to deal with these problems and realise what we're living with and realise the effect that Islam and Islamism is having on this country and on our everyday lives. How have we got 3% of the country dictating to 97% on many issues and causing so much alarm and distress and such a disturbance to the country when there's only 3%? And we're thinking of our children's futures, we're thinking of our country's future, we're thinking of our culture, and we're standing up for our way of life. And I think that's what you're seeing across Europe. You're seeing across the world. Islam is causing war and waging war everywhere, from one end of the planet to the other. People are realising it. People are realising now this facade that Islam is a religion of peace is absolute rubbish. It's not a religion of peace. It never has been. It never will be. And people are making a stand now and speaking out. Whereas in this country, we'd been beaten down with a racist stick by the previous government for 15 years. We've been walking on eggshells, scared to say anything through fear of being branded a racist. We've even seen a systematic rape of our youth by Muslim gangs, and the police knew it was going on for 20 years and they didn't do anything. And the reason why was through fear of being called a racist. They allowed rape through fear of being called a racist, because that's how big the problem was. Everyone was so scared. And we're breaking that taboo. We've broke that taboo. There's a lot more taboos we need to break. We need to break a two-tier policing system, a two-tier funding system that overwhelmingly favours the Islamic community.
Okay, Edward.
And wrongly so.
Edward, is Islam and Muslims being scapegoated here? Because of the melees that you mentioned, that you mentioned at the beginning of the program. Go ahead.
It's certainly what it sounds like to me. I mean, I have to admit that although I'm British, I'm living outside Britain at the moment, but I think I'm in reasonably close touch with the country. I'm visiting it very frequently. The idea that 97% of the population are being dominated by 3%, it's not recognizable to me at all. I really don't know what he's talking about.
Tommy, you want to respond to that?
Edward, can I?
Go right ahead,
yeah,
sir.
Edward, where are you from in England, Edward?
Well, I grew up in the southwest.
Edward? You grew up in the southwest. Which town is that,
I don't mind you asking at all. Exeter.
Okay, which town is that, Edward? Exeter. So you know nothing about growing up you know nothing about growing up in a town that is plagued with militant Islam. You are talking about things that you read and things that you study. You have no first-hand experience. Without being rude, I've grown up in Luton, the hotbed and the heart of militant Islam in this country. So I can speak more favourably and first-hand on the effect that Islam is having on us, in our communities, in our towns, on our youth, on our future. So I'm talking about experience, not what I've read, unlike yourself. So you can sit in a foreign country, which you are, trying to tell us how it is in England. I'm telling you how it is in the town I grow up in, the town I live in, the town I love. It's our town, and it is plagued with a disease.
Okay, Edward, it's quite fashionable today to say that multiculturalism has failed in Europe. We've heard the German Chancellor say it. I just said it's fashionable. We've heard Cameron, the British Prime Minister, say the same thing. I mean, it's fashionable because it's not getting the results that people want, or it's the politicians are afraid of the voters, and we have the case of Sarkozy that is looking for re-election. Angela Merkel's under a lot of pressure in local, in regional elections. I mean, what is the connection between the two? Is that this is more of a political move to say it's failed?
Well, I think it is a good deal of that. I think that Merkel said that because of the popularity of this book by Sarrazin, which you probably know about, yes. Which says that Germany is abolishing itself and will become a completely Muslim country by the end of the century, and which has been surprisingly popular. So I think that has had an effect on mainstream politicians. But I think they often don't define very clearly what they mean by multiculturalism when they say that it's failed. I mean, something has failed because obviously there are parts of our cities, and Luton may well be one of them, where you have something like Muslim ghettos or parallel societies. And if that is the result of multiculturalism, then obviously it's failed. But I think there may be other ways that one could interpret multiculturalism, and I would hope that it would mean bringing people of different culture and religion together and helping them to understand each other and to do things together and build a better country. And I know many Muslims in Britain who are trying to do that and who are not at all like the ones that Tommy is talking about. So I think he should not be a bit careful about generalizing and blackening a whole religion and all the people who follow it on the basis of some specific incidents.
Tommy, what do you say about that? Because that's a lot of people will say about individuals like yourself and your group, is that you just like to make a big, huge blanket around a group of people that are extremely nuanced, that are maybe from different generations, coming from different places, and the only thing that they have in common is their faith. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
You talk about putting a blanket over something. I believe that's what these politicians are doing when they say multiculturalism's failed, because it hasn't. Islam's failed. Islam's failed in Britain, it's failed in Europe, it's failing everywhere. Multiculturalism hasn't, and by putting a blanket, that's to broaden the problem, and so that it doesn't actually directly say who the problem are. The problem is the Islamic religion, the problem is the Islamic faith. It's not multiculturalism, because that's an insult to Sikhism, Hinduism, Judaism. It's an insult to the West Indian community of this country. It's an insult to the Irish community. All the different communities that have come to this country and embraced it and integrated fully. It is only and only the Islamic community who have failed to do that. And that's not our fault. We can't blame ourselves, we can't beat ourselves. The problem lies there in their community, not in ours. They need to reform their religion in a way that they wish to live side by side. They need to accept British law as the supreme law of this country. They need to denounce Sharia law, stop calling for it, stop calling for the spread of it, stop asking for the implementation of it, stop opening Sharia courts which are against the human rights of women, stop spreading Islamism across our country. And until they reform their religion, which is for them to do, we will continue highlighting these issues. And we're not racist for doing that. We're just pointing out the problems which are there, and they're there for everyone in the world to see, and they're spreading. These problems are not getting sorted by not talking about it, by not tackling it. We need to highlight them. I don't know how to solve the problem.
But it's very interesting, Tommy, if I go to Edward, I mean, as we speak right now, we have Muslim people in the Arab world fighting for their rights, fighting for freedoms, fighting for, some people would say, democracy. We'll see where it goes. I mean, it's kind of hard to kind of bring the two together. If you say one group of people of one faith in one part of the world is one thing, but when you have hundreds of millions of other people in another part of the world, the Muslim world, that are fighting for their freedoms right now, and a lot of people say people in Europe are walking away from those same freedoms by wanting to deny people that live there, even citizens, their rights.
Well, I mean, I think, frankly, it's ridiculous to lump everybody. You know, there are probably 100 million, or maybe something like 1 billion Muslims in the world. You know, it's to say that they're all the same and they're all militant jihadists or whatever. I mean, it's as ridiculous as it would be to say the same thing about all the Christians. I mean, I think that.
Well, I didn't say that.
You know, there are a number of unpleasant groups in the world, and some of them may be Muslim, and some of them have other ideologies. But I think that most Muslims, and certainly the ones I know, are law-abiding people who indeed want to coexist with their fellow citizens. And I think that it doesn't serve any purpose to build up this sort of hysteria about them.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to jump in here. After a short break, we'll continue our discussion on the political right. Stay with RT.
Yes, my name is Daniel Schmidt. This is Julian Assange. We're here to make a short presentation about the WikiLeaks project.
The first step in the fourth estate is to get information out about the real world.
Julian works on fear and on anger.
Secrecy is the biggest enemy of democracy.
If I'd ever put any sources in danger, he would hunt me down and kill me. This is exactly one of the reasons why we left the project, because it has become more about this whole James Bond bullshit than about the actual information.
First, some thank yous to all the people around the world who have had faith in me.
Welcome to the future, bringing you the latest in science and technology from around Russia.
We've got the future covered.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. To remind you, we're speaking about the rise of the right wing in Europe. But first, let's see what Russians think about this issue.
A recent poll suggests the leader of French far-right party Marine Le Pen is heading next year's presidential race in the country. The National Front Party is known for its anti-Semitic sentiments, but when taking over the party, Marine Le Pen vowed to focus on the role of Islam in France, home to 6 million Muslims, thus sparking further debate on immigration issues. The Russian Public Opinion Research Center asked Muscovites what the authorities should do to prevent tensions and conflicts between ethnic groups. 67% say registration and entry rules for unqualified labor force should be strengthened. 32% claim they should sever punishment for hate speech. 22% believe authorities should avoid concentration of migrants in particular areas. 18% see banning extremist political and religious groups as a solution. Solutions might be found for different issues, but will the return of the political right help resolve the immigration question? Peter?
Okay, tell me if I can go to you in London. A lot of people will say, and there'll be your critics, that the use of Islam, the use of talking about Islam and Muslims is today in Britain and Europe very akin to what was said about the Jews in the 1930s, scapegoating a group of people. How do you respond to that?
It's absolute nonsense. I wasn't around in the 1930s. We're not scapegoating anyone. All we're doing is highlighting and pointing out the problem. And the problem's there for everyone to see. The problem is an epidemic sweeping across this country, and everyone knows it. And that's why people who want to bury their head in the sand and pretend the public feeling is not there. Everyone, the English Defence League has been one of the biggest phenomenons to sweep this country ever. There's a reason for that. Because people in these towns and cities like Luton, not like Exeter, probably where Edward's from, because they probably don't have a clue about Islam in towns and cities like that, but towns and cities like Luton, where there are problems, in Birmingham, in Bradford, in Leeds, in Halifax, everyone's been feeling the same. We've had no voice. We've had no one protecting us, no one standing up for us, no one opposing this fascist ideology that's masquerading as a religion that's walking across our country unchallenged and promoting Sharia law, promoting hatred, promoting extremism, promoting homophobia, promoting anti-Semitism. All these different things are symptoms that are coming from this religion, and they need tackling. And it's not racist to try and talk about them. And I'd like to ask you yourself, Peter, when our organisation's called far right, what's far right about our organisation?
That's how media and analysts look at your organisation and others. The National Front in France, the media and other academics. I don't know nothing about National Front, but all right, I'm allowing you to express your opinion. That's all. Okay, that's why we invited you on the program.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, Edward, if I could go to you. A lot of scholars, and they're female scholars of Islam, they happen to be Muslims themselves, in the U.S., in the U.K., and in continental Europe have told me personally that for too long, liberals in the West did bury their head, saying, "Well, we want to be tolerant. We want to be tolerant. So just turn your head away from it. It's their business." And a lot of people, and there's a large Muslim community here in Moscow, and some people are saying, "Well, look, we live here. We have certain values. It's the way we live our life, and we expect you as guests and becoming citizens of this country to at least pick up some of the basics." And I think that's a fair thing to ask, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that we should stand up for the rights of all individuals, and of course that includes individual women, and we are concerned to recognize the rights of groups should never lead us to neglect the rights of individuals. When large numbers of individuals form a group and they want to practice their religion, build a mosque, whatever it is, I mean, those are also rights that people have and which we should respect. So I think that we shouldn't confuse the two things.
Tommy, what do you think about that? I mean, just go right ahead. You were about to say something. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I find it hard to respect. When we've seen 4 documentaries recently in Britain, we've seen the Islamic madrasa schools, we've seen what they're teaching in these Islamic madrasa schools, the anti-British, the homophobic. I find it hard to respect that in any way. We've seen the Green Lane Mosque, Undercover Mosque documentary, which showed them promoting hatred, extremism in one of the beacon of moderation mosques in this country. We've seen the East London Mosque with the Islamic Forum of Europe. Every time a mosque is exposed or an undercover documentary, we see hatred and we see extremism. So I personally find it very hard to respect any building of any more mosques and what's being promoted in them, because Sharia law is being promoted in them, and there's no governing body, there's no moderation of any of these mosques at all at the moment, and it's out of control. There's mosque applications going in left, right and centre, and until we solve the problem, until we deal, or until Islam deals with the militant elements of its religion, then they need to stop building these mosques.
It's very interesting, Edward. I've done a number of programs on immigration and Islam in Europe, and I'd like to address this to Edward here. It's not really the building of mosques per se, and maybe Tommy and his friends would disagree, but it's because Europe itself is becoming less and less Christian, and our identities are not determined usually through our religious faith. It's one of our identities, but because of how Muslim people feel that they are perception they're treated, that they retreat into their religion. That's at least some interpretations out there. I mean, isn't that really the difference? It's the secularization that we've experienced in Europe?
Maybe partly that, but I think, you know, all these things are generalizations, and the fact, you know, that there are many people in Europe who are from Muslim background, but may not particularly wish to be identified as Muslims, and there are others who say, no, this is an important part of my identity. And I think there are many who, while they may not be particularly keen to draw attention to themselves, when they hear somebody talking the way Tommy does about their religion and making out as if, you know, a few things that go on in a few mosques and which have been given a great prominence in the media. And incidentally, I find that, you know, on one hand, he's claiming that claiming that you're being silenced and, you know, that this is an unheard voice. And then you cite a series of documentaries that have been given prominent, you know, been shown on the BBC or wherever. I think certainly some Muslims do feel offended by that, and they feel that they are being targeted and scapegoated, and that probably reinforces their Islamic identity and may make them even, I think it's a mistake. They should be prepared to denounce anybody who's advocating violence or intolerance, but they may be more reluctant to do so if it means that they're going to be associated with people who talk the way Tommy does.
What do you think about that, Tommy? I mean, if people are attacked, they're scapegoated, they would naturally turn inward on their own, the identity that you're forcing upon them. Go right ahead.
Remember, the English Defence League's only been here for not even 2 years. What's happened before that? No one forced anything. No one was saying anything against Islam because people were too petrified, and the problem was there. You talk about Muslims feeling offended. We're offended on a daily basis.
I find that rather hard to take. I mean, after the July bombings, there was a great deal of anti-Muslim speech.
Okay, that's 2007. It's been going on for 15 years.
I hoped that we had got past that.
Well, Edward, why hasn't Britain got past it then?
Because they keep on wanting to blow us.
I think it's a
sorry.
Go ahead, Edward. Go ahead.
I think it's a complicated set of questions, but we're certainly not helped by media who go out looking for minorities to blame and who encourage this kind of feeling. I think that most of the people who actually live in areas where there are Muslims and who see them every day know that it's only a small minority of them that would advocate terrorism or you know, extreme versions or traditions, you know, which involve the oppression of women and all that. I think it's the trouble is that most people are learning about it from the media and from people like Tommy, and they get very worried about what's happening to the country. And I think it's enormously exaggerated, and it's not a helpful way to deal with it.
What do you think about that, Tommy? You're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hear that. We're a symptom. We are a symptom of the problem. If you get down to the root cause of the problem and deal with it, there would be no English Defence League. You talk about small numbers and a handful of people. 10,000 people attended Hizb ut-Tahrir's last annual rally in this country, in London. 10,000 people. 37%
how many Muslims are there in Britain? You said 3% of the population are Muslim.
Tommy?
Yeah, so 10,000 is really quite a small proportion.
10,000 really. Okay, well, the British National Party hold an annual rally, and they get 1,000 people. They got 2 million votes. So Hizb ut-Tahrir got to have 10,000 people attend their rallies. 37% of British Muslims, when identified in a poll, said they wish for Sharia law in this country. That's not a small percent. If that's 3 million people,
but do you know what Sharia law means?
Do you know what Sharia law means?
You know,
yeah. I know Sharia law.
I mean, I happen to have studied this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's 100 Sharia law. There's 100 Sharia law courts in this country. The European Court of Human Rights in 2007 was it issued that Sharia law is incompatible with Western democracy and freedom due to their views on homosexuals, their views on women, and their views on infidels. So this is a system that cannot.
Okay, is that Sharia law, Edward? Edward, we're almost out of time. Is that a correct characterization? Go ahead, Edward.
No, because he's jumping from he talks about Sharia law, which is an abstraction, and then he talks about their views. And so who are we talking about here? The fact is, almost every Muslim will tell you he wants to follow the Sharia, which is the path following the divine law. I mean, Christians would say the same. That it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to cut people's hands off or anything like that. Mostly it refers to marriage law, family law. Where if two people get married, they make a contract, and they need to know what the terms of the contract are, and so they will say, we're having this marriage under Sharia law. It really needn't be as sinister as Tommy makes it sound.
All right, Tommy, I'm going to give you the last word. 20 seconds. Go ahead, Tommy. Go ahead, 20 seconds.
Well, and Edward's defending Sharia law, but women in these Sharia law courts are treated unfairly. Women have fought for decades in this country for equal rights. We are not allowing British Muslim women are women of our country. We're not allowing them to be brushed aside and treated unfairly.
I'm sorry, Tommy, I'm going to have to jump in here. Gentlemen, we've run out of time. Many thanks to my guests today in London and Strasbourg, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.